I know many of you that know me are shocked because I'm actually starting on time. Don't tell anybody that I've done this. I don't want to get it to be part of, I don't want people to know that I actually could start on time. So we're going to start on time today. Really happy to be able to be part of this incredible exhibit, the art of agriculture that has been, this is its 10th year. It's a really wonderful collaboration between agriculture, and for those of you who eat food, probably know that agriculture is somewhat important. And this is one of the great agriculture centers of California, right here in Ventura County, and especially here in the, is it Heritage Valley now?
Skip that.
Okay.
The Santa Clara River Valley.
Santa Clara River Valley. See, historian, ask. Because they change names all the time. I think they called, for a while Oxnard was calling us the Strawberry Coast. Something like that. But so we're the Heritage Valley, and this is really important to us, and how we as artists interact with agriculture, and how we communicate with the people that are doing agriculture can set up a dialogue that is going to make a big difference in the future as more and more people are in the world, more and more people need water. All these things are important things, and that we need to be able to deal with we need to be able to discuss with the people that are making these decisions. And art is always one of the places that we do this. Very fortunate to work with the Santa Paula Art Museum, but really happy to work with my dear friend John Nichols, who's going to come in talk with you right now.
And a little over 10 years ago, my art partner, Gail Piddock, who's a painter, and I'm a photographer and writer and do other things, but Gail was asked to put on an art about agriculture show at the Ventura County Fairgrounds. And she said, I don't have enough art. Can I invite a friend? And then, yeah, she invited me. And then we looked around, it was a building about this big, and we said, we have to invite all the artists we know. And we filled it up with art about agriculture for one weekend. But it's planted the seed, and it was such a good idea that we said, we are going to take this and move it around and find different homes. So we were at the California Oil Museum for a few years, and then when the Santa Paula Art Museum opened up, we said, this is going to be ground zero for art about agriculture. Both Gail and I feel that we observe politics, but as far as running for public office, William Mulholland was once asked if he would like to run for public office. He designed the St. Francis Dam disaster. He said, I'd rather give birth to a porcupine backwards. My feelings about creating social change are that we can be much, much more effective in making positive social change through our chosen medium, art, rather than running for office. You can run for office if you want, and everybody should vote, but I want you to recognize that you are performing radical social alteration through your art because I say so. I consider that why would I put all this energy into creating this art exhibits for the public if it wasn't to open their eyes the way that only artists and poets can to the nature of our reality. We want to have people get out from under the thumb of the oppressive dictatorship of social media and the political system, and as a revolutionary act, you say, I want you to see the world as I see it. I'm going to help you through my art. So you look at art, then you go home and say, I need to find out about water and agriculture and crops and labor. I don't know enough to make educated changes, to make educated decisions, so I can initiate change on all levels. The purpose of a lot of the art that we're doing is not to entertain the old folks that are not working and can come in and see this. It's to do a lot more. One of the things that we can do with this art exhibit is to interact with other mediums. We've got sculpture, but why don't we interact with poetry? Why don't we see how poetry interacts with the visual arts? I think poetry and ballet and photography and art are really the same thing. They're about showing the audience how you saw the world through artists' eyes, and then you say, follow me. So I write essays, and I really, really appreciate poetry, and I love it, and I read it all the time, and I want to turn it over to Phil so he can get some poets going.
Actually, this is my first time to Santa Paula, so I'm not going to tell you a lot more except that my husband went to high school here. So later on, he's going to show me where he used to live. I've got two really, really short poems, and I want to preface them with just a little bit of history about, agriculture and farming in California. I'm a third-generation Japanese American. I'm a sansei. And it was my grandparents' generation, the Issei, that did all sorts of farming all throughout the state of California. We were farmers, flower growers, nurserymen. My grandpa was a nurseryman. I don't know if that falls under the category of agriculture. Oh, it does? Okay. Yeah. And my other grandfather used to deliver groceries to the farmers in the San Gabriel Valley. So there was a relationship there too. Now in the 1940s, I did a little Googling. We were 1.7% of California's population. But we were producing 40% of all the vegetables in the state, and nearly 100% of tomatoes, celery, strawberries, and peppers. Now, as all of you know, we were put into concentration camps, and some of the major California groups that wanted to get rid of us were white farmers, because the Japanese were too much competition. So I thought I would read, one other thing too, just to show you how much the green thumb was in Japanese Americans. Even when they went to camp, for example, Manzanar, they had vegetable gardens, they built Japanese gardens with ponds and stones and trees. Whatever they could get going in that really harsh environment, they did. So I think that's just amazing. I'm going to read these two short poems that I hope honor Issei. The first one's really short. Lettuce and Strawberries. Our grandfathers could move their hands beneath land no one else wanted until it breathed for them. Everything they touched bore fruit, even at night, that moist, dark field. And some of the Issei farmers weren't so lucky about getting wives. You know, you've heard of the term picture brides or arranged marriages. Yes?
Just explain to some of the people who may not know what Issei means.
I thought I did.
You did. You said Sansei's third generation.
Okay. That's my husband. Issei is first generation. Yeah, first generation immigrants from Japan. Nisei's second, my parents, yeah. So unfortunately, well, sadly, some of them had never got wives or children. This is called The Bachelor's Unwritten Letter to Japan. The old man feels lucky tonight. He just came home with the freshest mackerel from Iwamoto's stand. He salts the fish and sets his small table as if there'll be guests, carefully arranging the pot of steaming rice, a large bottle brimming with warm sake, the just opened jar of spring cabbage pickled by Yoshi's wife. It is late summer, and he'll eat until full, lingering under the San Joaquin moon, its slow light crossing the infinite lines of sugar beets, lettuce, and peas, which furrow through the dark to his home. Thank you.
This poem is in response to the two photographs by Ted Dayton. Wonderfully evocative photos you'll find around the corner of citrus trees and shrouded in netting. And for those of, they were wonderfully evocative. The netting preserves the seedless variety of the tree from cross-pollination. So this poem is Between Lives. And foolish me, wrapped in self-sufficiency, as if self-cultivation ever bore more than a seedless fruit of self. As if by vain imagining that I would ever find more vital force than life itself, its living form. And you, intuition, between lives, abundant with possibility, fruitful beyond my thought. The veils part. Now the bees trace their hidden paths from each to each. I will know you by the trembling petal, that delicate touch that sets the fruit, that bears the seed.
Santa Paula Art Museum displays agrarian art, and I can taste fresh corn. I see rows of citrus wrap rambling hills. Eucalypti, wind catchers embrace shimmering skies. I see the evening sun stroke mountains, paint them pink. Puddles reflect shades of lavender. Orange, lemons, flowers garnish lush bounty. I walk the polished floors, admire quiet beauty. In hushed halls, no chickens cackle, no crows call, or workers sing, or branches rustle. Streams and ponds are still, silent, no sounds of tractor grind the air. Crack, crash, I hear a rail splinter and boots running. I smell terrified cow, recognize the sounds of catastrophe, remembered from when pipes burst, horses foundered, hay caught fire in the shed. I want to lend a hand with the fence, help rescue the cow, share a meal of boiled corn.
I have a friend who doesn't see, I've known for some time, and he always loved it when I would describe things for him. My poem is after Morning Mist, painted by Katie Flagon. He lay on the plane of his bed, paralyzed, without sight, memory stolen by MS. Tell me more, he pleads, without vision half his life, missing what he once glimpsed without thinking. We're speaking about loss. Nothing seems real. What does it look like where he lives now? I think of the painting I saw of the land that lifts me from grief, that might be destroyed for more and more oil, and then where would we be? Just another place gone gray. I describe how the artist captured our California hills, having such fun being hills, wing curved as far as you can see, etched with morning sun's gold, all pitch and thrust like the seas he'd ridden in the distance. And greenest trees, oaks, I think, a grove nestled in the folds of earth's nurturing flesh. As if you are hawk on the glide, you see shadows reflected everywhere. No argument who's best, not running from each other, but creating a larger beauty. They know their time is short, their shape will change, that they'll become something else. He smiles. I go on. Layers of color draw your eye from tan sand dunes to cliffs out to sea where purple islands rise in the mist to a wash of blue sky. He tells of a time he could run like the sun. His stiff body quivers in a rumble of yellow, taking it all in, his hand reaching out to catch a ball or touch an arrow of light, saying sometimes he senses shadows just above his head.
I wrote this of Jean Kalanimus. She's not here, she's sick. It's entitled Working the Land. There's a chocolate brown field ready for planting. Hold a handful of the rich dark soil, roll it in your fingers. It's as soft as a pillow to dream on. Let its silkiness slide through your hands as if in prayer to receive the desired harvest. There's the field of my body, plowed incessantly by mind, driven incessantly by ego. It survives on a monoculture of suspicion. Oh, this earth that knows no judgment. My monoculture shares sparingly, its harvest weakening, relying on unnatural means to boost its yield, its flavor. Earth to humans, follow my disciplines. Inhale the ground to record the miracle of what is good and true. There is a time to be fallow, to rest while the field becomes home again to flocks of innocence and recovers its vitality, freeing my mind with the formidable verses of earth. It's our only hope.
I came out here a couple weeks ago. I'd never been to Santa Paula, can you believe that? And I wanted to see this museum. I love the city. What a great exhibit this is. And one of the paintings really jumped out at me. It was by Chryss Zambon, and it's called Autumn Ranch. And as soon as I saw it, I thought of a very famous poem as well, so I'm hoping that I'm going to honor both the painting and the poet. So much depends upon a red pickup parked under eucalyptus, and a letter left open on the long bunkhouse table, stained with mugs, her empty cup of coffee, 3 white chickens at the screen door. Thank you.
So I wrote about one of the portraits that's back. If I knew it was going to be in a safe, I would have worked that in because I only saw it online. This is the portrait Giuseppe by Ashley Funicello, and the name of the poem is Portrait. Let me give you one more reason not to trust me, beyond my desire to buy your strawberries cheap, as I so mindlessly can without once thinking of you, close to pesticides to please me. Let me eat shortcake or homemade granola my wife has the extravagant time to make. One more reason not to trust me, beyond my need to drag in Agee and Evans, art shit up into something obscure I know just enough of, despite never getting through all of the moral weight of Let Us Now Praise Famous Men. You know, I've looked at the pictures. I can officiously intone about the composition of Ellie Mae Burroughs enough to bury her face under words so her eyes can barely burn out. You know, the skeptical ones align with the weathered slats of the house, an image that would be black and white even in color. Their book didn't sell, so was that kind of American failure. One more reason not to trust me, as I want to say the face is a landscape, as I ache to use the adjective worn, which is easy when you're not doing the verb wearing. Like that gray shirt you no doubt press to pose in, like that clean hat for Sundays when you're not in the field in sweat and sun, the hat which shades your eyes that look down anyway, for the least they can do is not let any single one of us in.
This poem is after a painting called Orange Bowl with Figs by Neva Felino. Take a fig, split the seam with your thumb, press the mess to your lips, soft sweetness against the tongue. Figs spill onto the table where ripeness turns to rot. Hours, days. Our tongues sit swollen, dumb. We watch ants process along the bowl's edge, and then they are the bowl, the figs. Good for them. We will not eat them all.
I am originally from Nebraska, and I found when I moved out here, everybody thought Nebraska was a farm. That's it, just a farm. The agriculture is a little different, I found in California, so I wrote something a little bit about California. So thank you. Growing season. It's the righteousness of soil beneath our feet, and the sun writing stories on your face, each line breathing tomorrow, tomorrow, into the bend of a tender root. And the rain, the taste of rain, drinking deep, that graces your palm with the sweet round orange.
This is based on a painting, a watercolor by Debbie Abshir called Sienna Hills. But I threw a rooster in because I was so taken by the rooster paintings too, so the rooster just fits in there for some reason. That morning rooster roamed the tiled floor, unaware that it had come indoors. Piercing noises woke us. Blue-eyed morning rose in the Sienna Hills amid crows. Did you gather the eggs that morning? Did you ride the wind? I turned past the barn where mint, salvia, and rosemary rise out of its southern corner. Sky threads its piercing heat. A wave of citrus plants itself in my memory. A tree pulls me into its grateful mesh of wonder. I will outline for you the folds of the mountain in the ochre-shadowed afternoon. Like an ancient elephant fallen on its side, the flap of one darker ear, the ridges of its gray hind legs, the head on a bold diagonal. Now the ear lifts, attuned to the inaudible hum of the earth. At that moment, the family assembles for dinner. You hold a split pomegranate in your hand. The other holds the juicy arils, the optimism of a garden, lemons in orange light.
I was intrigued by a number of the images of vineyards from Sacramento. And so one of the great problems for people who grow grapes are birds. And that's all I'll say. The rest of this poem is pretty autobiographical. It's called The Kingdom of Heaven, and it begins with a line from Matthew 21. For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is an householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. No netting back then, or holographic foil, or scare eye balloons, or ultrasonic cannons, or heaven forfend paper bags stapled around each ripening bunch. No, when Paul High wanted the starlings and blackbirds gone from the vineyards in the Sacramento Valley in the late 1970s, he paid me $10 an hour and all the 12-gauge shotgun shells I could shoot. Disseminating fear was the goal. It didn't matter if I killed anything, as long as I kept firing and bore the burden and heat of the day. And so I sweated in the scorching shade of the vines, squeezing the trigger again and again while buckshot rained down on the leaves like hail. Drinking warm water from my father's army canteen, breathing dust and slapping at mosquitoes, surprised almost and rarely pleased when some errant shot sent the occasional bundle of feathers spiraling down into the alkaline furrows like a wounded prayer from the otherwise empty air. Thanks.
The poem I'm about to read it was inspired by a painting that's in the gallery behind you, Encroachment by Carl Dempf-Wolf, and also by Los Angeles Aqueduct by Mary Austin Klein, which is just to your left. Decision at the edge of utopia. He pulls earth away from a cornstalk at the edge of an embankment and shows me a cross-section of root structure that is clearly suboptimal. He talks at length about breadth, depth, nodals, and water uptake, trying to talk it up. But he misses the underlying structure. All I can see are the stunted rules of A becomes AB, B becomes A. In his barn, he proudly shows me barrels of steroid nitrogen and superphosphates and walks me past mounds of soil covered in tarp. He lights a cigarette and continues to tell me about his operation, the yield per acre, and BT genes. I already know these things, but watch as his enthusiasm grows and how that little glowing bee he's holding darts back and forth in ever smaller repeating patterns. By the time he's done, I think he's swept away all of the space in front of him. He's looking to me for approval. He wants me to say we're doing everything we can, that next year's harvest will be better. I turn to give him reassurance, but hesitate. All I can see for him are the rules languishing on a spot in his lungs, the angular degeneration of forward, forward, left, back, forward, right in his bronchial tubes. I think he already knows this, and that somewhere inside he can see it in me as well, a light designed to dwindle slowly, inevitably. With plows of precision and steel, my handlers inch closer to the desert, feeding electrons to holograms of glass and chrome, and little yellow stars and electronic candy to their progeny. They are removed from their past, but realize its utopia, printed out one layer of reality at a time, then roll each of them across decaying fence posts and abandoned bunkhouses. The rows of their harvest are like space-filling curves, smothering one valley and then spilling over into the next. I am merely an intermediary to a part of themselves that they've lost, a construct to ensure that food cubes remain stacked behind pictures of perfectly delicious fruit. He sees the expression on my face and his smile fades. C'est la vie, he says. I tell him that we lost the middle third. He nods knowingly and adds, then the third of that. Right, I reply, ad infinitum. Still, there's always something to build off of, a technology we can try next. Protein farms, maybe. He begins to cough and then wheeze into his fist. Maybe, he rasps, before catching his breath. That's up to you guys. You can hope. I don't think I'll be around to see it. I kneel down and pick up a handful of tan, dry soil. Hidden among the minerals are sparse organic material, pesticides, and auxins. But he notices something I don't. In the shadow of my shoe, a tiny seedling has taken root. I study the area, and sure enough, I could just make out a hint of green and the first iterations of its structure. For the longest time, I look at the seedling and wonder if I should leave it there or take it home and put it in my makeshift greenhouse. I wonder about the number of iterations we have left, about that tiny bee bound to a perilous path, about whether or not a rule can right itself. I look up, and in my contemplation, didn't realize the light in the barn had changed. It was as if the colors of the world had been muted with the soft, sentimental tones of browns and grays. Surging up from the horizon, the consequences of our hubris twists angrily upon itself and strikes out, mindless and all-consuming. I look once more at the seedling and reach out. Time to go, the man tells me, as he places his hand softly on my shoulder. Dust storm's coming. Thank you.
Well, as you might intuit, I grew up in an orange orchard, and my grandparents on both sides were also citrus growers in Santa Ana and in the Simi Valley when that was not all housing tracts, and then in Fillmore. And I hope they weren't among the ones that were against the Japanese growers, but I just hope not. Anyway, one of the things that struck me as a kid was the precariousness of being a farmer. And we watched the weather report every night because a really bad frost at the wrong time of year could ruin the crop. And all your work is gone for the whole year. And does anybody remember smudge pots? Yeah. Oh, did So we used to wake up sometimes with these black circles around our nostrils, I'm surprised we're not all dead. But then along came wind machines. And my father was the Ford dealer in Fillmore for a long time before he too became a farmer. And one of his jobs was, since he was good with machines, was going out in the middle of the night sometimes to repair these wind machines. And so I made a kind of, as children will, I made a kind of mythology of it in this poem. It's called Warming the Orchards. From these still farms, you can look out to the mountains. There's nothing but a red tail soaring the cliffs to tell you who you are or what time is. Nights when the breeze dies and frost lies on the ground, you can hear a distant beat, a slow heart rhythm. West Wind sleeps in his best brown suit, a traveling man with an engine and a prop. He loves to rev it up, blowing off the ladies' hats. He tells about the fool who won't buy wind. When a big freeze comes, this guy rousts his wife and 10 kids out of bed and runs them up and down the farm flapping their sheets. He slaps his leg, laughs loud and long. My mom marries him. We move into town. The phone rings. Oh, let's see, I forgot a line. We move into town. They even allow me to pray for snow. The phone rings. The oranges are freezing, and the gold darn machine won't blow. Out stamps my old man to climb the tower, rung by rung, with all the heavens below. And the dark trees, hill after hill, row upon row. With a single clank of metal on metal and a puff of smoke, The great propeller draws a breath across the land. All who were lost, lost like lambs, awake to the roar of wind machines, wind out of the old caves in the old tongues.
So our little bit of agriculture is that we keep chickens, hens, who I would like to say are woefully underrepresented here. So this is the Time's Up poem for you roosters. This is called Morning Rounds. It's after Morning Rounds by George Lockwood, and also the Mr. Rooster poem or painting in here. What use roosters, except the gloss of elegant feathers, the battle spirit between brothers, gunmetal talons, and comb and alarm? No one wants the bird to call the time. We kill the messenger as if dreams aren't going to crack open anyhow, as if the cock and his crowing made the November morning a blur of gray, and the thermostat created cold. The lovely little pullets fluff and build fat for eggs that never need to hatch, and you boys go off in a box, unable to stop welcoming the dawn.
This poem I'm going to read was inspired by really a number of the different paintings in here. And also I've been reading a lot of Seamus Heaney recently, and in particular what he calls his impulse towards transcendence, which is the obligation of art to sing for us. So this is called Song. Something cannot happen without hands. I am here to say something cannot grow without touch. Can you hear me? Somewhere is not without hunger. In the fields, on the wall, in the ground, on a page, can you see me? Make a fire or a basket or a meal or a song someone might sing. A long grave-like swath in the earth, one row after the next, sprinkled with seeds, or a sheet of ground wood smeared with the pigment image of our wanting, as if to say, listen, see this? I am of this place. I am enjoined by it. My hunger and form is yours.
So I did some research for this poem, and I wanted to do a poem that kind of was based on the Bracero program of the 1940s, and I found out that Ventura County was actually the county that received the most braceros during the time that the program existed, which was from 1942 to 1964. And it was when the most Mexican agricultural workers were brought in through some sort of it was a deal that was basically legalized indentured servitude. And I guess when I was first learning about the Bracero program a while back, I liked to think that wouldn't happen now, that indentured servitude is like a time, it's so far away from where we are now. But there's a program now called, it's the H2 visa, the H2A visa, and it's not very different. And it's happening now. And so this poem is based on the Bracero program, and it starts with an epigraph, taken from arguably Mexico's most famous song, Mexico Lindo. And the chorus is probably the most famous part. So I'm going to start with that and then lead into the poem. México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti, que digan que estoy dormido y que me traigan a ti. Bring nothing with you, not your mother's sleepy hands poking at edges of soft masa on a searing comal. Not your father's jokes that hold your belly and shake you like heartfelt pain when his laugh turns full-throated cough. Not your chiquita's hair resuscitating you with each breath that turns sigh into her neck. Not the safety in 22 blocks surrounded by dirt roads and tranquil tamarindo orchards you call mi tierra. Not the smoky hug of a pit fire while hunched on a log with your closest friends under a canopy of constellation, cutting your teeth on pulque and ribald laughs, not knowing, much less caring, of what tomorrow will bring. You know, you still don't know what tomorrow will bring, but now you worry as you leave all you know behind. But let your dreams guide you, escuincle. Let the memory of preparing livestock for sale float off when you stand naked in a hall with hundreds of others, desperate for dignity as you jump and stretch and bend for degradation. Let your body step into a blue, swirled white cloud of chemical soot. Let your eyes and lungs burn as the killer powder settles in your hair and skin protruding with bones. Let yourself be led by the mass of brown bodies dressing themselves and boarding buses to unknown expectations. Let your heart sing with pride when you stoop and sidestep in furrows over lettuce, sugar beets, tomatoes. Let fire spread throughout your spine while sleep escapes you for another countless night. Let humiliation clench your jaw when the only lettered kid in your group explains deductions that led to a check of 2 cents, and you begin to understand your earnings will never be enough to make this all worth it. Let rage cloud your vision in knowing you are just another product used to build wealth for a country that made it clear it never wanted you. Let the bus jostle and hurl you along a road to a desert of defeat you know too well. Let the tears streak through your dusty cheeks as you tell yourself, if I was going to die this way, why not go home to do it? Que digan que estoy dormido y que me traigan aquí.
My poem was inspired by Produce by Phyllis Doyen. And I especially liked how all the mushrooms in the photo or the painting were upturned. And so she painted it like that. I don't know, I just enjoyed that about it. Today's haul brings lemons and leeks, which we can admire for their resilience, in strong, tight-knit and fibrous strings, and for their delicacy. When steamed, they open to each other like lovers. We peel artichoke petals and eat them brined, peppered and massaged with fresh garlic. See how firm these beets are, and yet they bleed for us, even after their 5th wash in the colander. What makes this land whole is the ocean and the harvest, Soil is one with sea salt, and radishes catch in our throats, establishing themselves with pepper and prominence. We are blessed to experience such bounty and grateful to the hands that lift limes from their stems and tomatoes from vines. Thank you.
Poets exploiting real trees for their metaphors. There was talk about trees among the poets who I thought had long ago used up brambles and branches to insinuate the tangles of family connections. Their senescing leaves spelling seasons of revelation, the downfall of dynasties, and their trunks, of course, standing up for fortitude. So when the talk finally got around to unbridled lumbering and dying rainforests, the walnut tree in Jesse's yard came to mind. Its cooling shade more generous than Longfellow's chestnut tree. In spite of its annual litter, I loved its sway, what sang and nested in its mazes. Something besides birds showed up, burrowed in, and the tree thinned. Bits of bark began peeling and falling. I'd hear twigs cracking off in the night, its brittle limbs letting the wind take them, snow taking them down in winter. The yard began to change, like a peach withering at its soft spots. So much the poets took from the trees, from Blake to Lorca to Frost, from Frost's swinger of birches to Lorca's arboles, to Yeats, who wrote of the holy trees in the heart, the garden's trees, the Sephirotic tree of life stretching to heaven, yet firmly stuck in earth. They left the stump. Looking now across Jesse's lawn, I can see clear to the back fence, pear trees once obscured. The leafy play of sun gone, there's a starker sense of tenure. So I steal a line from Yeats, not one about trees, but words that uncover. A terrible beauty is born, a body after fever, the woods after fire.
One of the things I've been realizing is how I didn't fully understand my relationship to agriculture or land at all. It's true that both my grandfathers, one grandfather had a ranch in what is now Burbank, and that was when it was dry land before the water was brought in, and he sold it to an agent from Chandler who knew the water was coming and sent people out to buy the land. And then the other one had 10 acres in like Santa Ana, my other grandfather, and they leased 9 of them to a Mexican-American family, and they kept 1 acre and they raised rabbits. And my aunt, Marianne, had to slaughter the rabbits, and my father had to build the boxes in which the rabbits would be packed in dry ice and shipped on the railroad to Las Vegas. And all I took from that was that I always knew my Aunt Marianne was a kind of a killer. And in my backyard, at one point, I put in like raised beds to grow vegetables. And I did start to grow some vegetables, but I would find myself feeling resentful. Like, I would think other people get to buy their food and I have to go out and eat in the back like an animal. Like I'm not, an animal. I am. So there's a lot that needs to change in the way we relate to land and to life and the earth and to each other. And it's the painting of the field of sunflowers at dawn in Maui and over there. And it's called Helianthus, which is Latin for sunflower. And it starts with the words Koyu Abe, which is someone's name. It's the name of one of the chief Buddhist monks in Fukushima who has passed out thousands and thousands and thousands of sunflowers since the nuclear accident. Helianthus. Koyu Abe hands out thousands all over Fukushima. Drifts of Amazons stretching up in abandoned yards, empty towns, alongside the nuclear plant. You pass a field of sunflowers in Spain. You're on a bus. I don't know you yet. Have you ever been so happy? Endless faces, countless rays, this granary, this cluster feast. Van Gogh's painting sunflowers. Here's gratitude and dying every day. Here's waiting on the beloved. Would Gauguin come? Let me stay in the compass of my heart. And something grants his prayer. He's already there in blossom and blossom and blossom. 2 million standing in Fukushima, hundreds rising at road's edge, an entire field of bisexual enigma stars nodding their heads. 1,000 queens, each keeping a secret. 1,000 clandestine florets, pollinated by drunkards, by wade in the water bees up to their knees in nectar, fetlocks covered with pollen. The world doesn't need us to know it exists. At the base of the flower, a door and a hall of hidden chambers to conceal, to save seeds salted away in the compass of their bed, chaff for linen, perfect packages packed in a spiral, growth of hair on our baby's head. I dress her in corduroy, and she toddles toward a giant, full fathom 2, long green muscled trunk, fuzzed and prickled, downward gazing head, catching light to card and spin, weave the thread, thrust color back into the world, a symphony in blue and yellow. What if we're like electrons in 2 places at once, up to our knees in nectar, fetlocks covered in pollen? Why not let joy stick? We could start over. Fathom again in flower speak. Streaming tip of cytoplasm. Corollas open lips to smelt, to palp. Flush-fleshed brim in a flash. Come, love that. Come, slake me. Thank you.